Mino Line Media presents the Business First Podcast.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today we welcome back Robert Blackwell Jr., who is a serial entrepreneur based in Chicago. He is the founder and CEO of Quant16, analytics. I'm going to start just from the second sentence, Ken. Is that okay? All right. He is the founder and CEO of Quant16, an analytics and technology firm. He is also the CEO of Killerspin, a company that offers a line of luxury table tennis tables, paddles, and accessories. In fact, in 2016, he presented the now late Pope Francis with a customized ping pong table for the Vatican. Robert is also one of the founding members of Test Love, which is on a mission to prove that the free enterprise system works for everyone, which he is insisting should be the next great American movement. Welcome back, Robert.
Thank you.
How are you? How have you been?
Life is good. I've had separation anxiety, so I've missed you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're back. And from our last conversation, you said a lot of things, a lot of great things. And you had me researching. And one of the models that you talked about, that you said that we needed to reemploy the Black Wall Street model. And so since our last conversation, I went to Tulsa, and which I now feel should be mandatory for all Americans, not just Black Americans, but Black and white Americans. And what I hadn't known I had known about the massacre in 1921. And I know you know all of this. This is for just creating some context for our audience. But what I didn't know was that after the massacre, because the government had deemed it a riot, they weren't entitled to any insurance. So only white owners were entitled to insurance. And the ones that helped Black business owners, they lost their insurance as well. And so without any insurance, still in the 1920s, this community was able to rebuild bigger and stronger than they were before they were destroyed. And so it goes back to, some of the things that we talked about in the last episode, where what is it? And you talked about this then, but for new listeners, and hopefully this will encourage people to go back and listen to our first conversation together. But what is it with all, again, and I asked you this before, with all the technology, with all the information, with all the education, that we can't replicate, or we haven't been able to replicate, what was done in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. And then again, after it was totally destroyed. People were massacred, buildings were burned, and we were able to rebuild without insurance money, without any laws helping us out, without any government support. We were able to build bigger and stronger than we were before.
Well, if you ask yourself the question, how do people go from poverty to prosperity? How do communities go from nothing to something? And there's only one way. That is entrepreneurial-led economic activity in the parts of the economy that create wealth, that leads to the appreciation of education and social capital. Social capital is when you reach back and you pull people from your community forward, but more importantly, you create an aspirational roadmap for your young people so they know where to place their bets. So it is social capital. So if you look at what happened after World War II, why did Germany, which was almost totally destroyed in the war, and London, why were they able to build back so quickly? There were two things. One is they had lost physical capital, but they hadn't lost human capital. Human capital is more important than physical or monetary capital. So what we had is, even though those people were taken advantage of, they still had what made them great in the first place, which was human capital.
Right.
And social capital, like if you would have heard of a mutual insurance company, what is a mutual insurance company? It is the owners, the policy holders, are actually owners of the country of the company. The company exists for the benefit of its stakeholders.
Right.
So it's built around this principle of mutualism, is that if you benefit from being a part of a society, that you have some responsibility to pull other people forward. So while they lost their property, they never lost the human capital that got them there in the first place. Now, why haven't we had anything like that since? It is because I think we were confused, in my view, integration with the right, or desegregation with the right to what I would call desegregation, and what I call the one set of rules movement. Black people just wanted one set of rules. And obviously, we didn't have one set of rules because it was practically legal for white people to terrorize us, to burn down our stuff if they got pissed off because, if somebody saw Jack Johnson with a white woman, they would go and lynch black people. So it wasn't one set of rules for everybody. There was a set of rules for some people and a different set of rules for us. So I believe that during the civil rights movement, there was a push for one set of rules. But then that also turned into desegregation, which people like Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X and others thought you're pushing up the wrong tree. Don't go trying to take white people's jobs. Make your own business and hire your own people instead of begging white people for stuff. And they said what I happen to believe is you can't be a man begging another man for what's his. So I think we lost the importance of business. Booker T. Washington in 1895 gave the famous Atlanta Exposition speech, where essentially that speech said America's never going to be what it can be until blacks get included in the economy. He said, we don't need to live around you, but if we're not part of the economy, we will be disproportionately involved in crime, which is true. And by the way, there is no place on earth where poor people are not disproportionately involved in crime. That has nothing to do with us. It happens to do with kind of human nature. And if anybody's ever seen the movie Goodfellas, right, you see Henry Hill looking out the window and all the guys with the clothes, the cars, the women, they're all gangsters, right? So that was attractive for people in that community. Why is that any different from us? It's not. The only different thing is when black people are criminals, we certainly have our share of hoodlums and criminals just like everybody else. But that becomes black culture. Nobody would say that John Gotti and all the other criminals that were not black, that's somehow white culture. That's criminal culture. They were criminals. So what I think is the two things where we went wrong, I would say, instead of us begging other people for theirs, the only thing we should be doing is to say, we just want to participate in the economy in proportion to our talent, and we'll take care of ourselves. So we don't need any more little black kid programs where rich people give crumbs. Charity, for the most part, is the crumbs of other people's success. If we have money, we feed our own little black kids instead of begging other people to give money. That only comes through the participation in the parts of the economy that create wealth. So since we haven't done that, and we've been focused on other non-economic things or asking other people to save us, that's why we haven't been saved. There's no such thing as a starving aid worker. They feed themselves first. That's just how the world works.
I think it's important that I wanted to have you expound a little bit too on what this charity looks like for the Black community, because part of that, what you would consider charity, is what we've been fighting for, particularly with the installation of this last administration, the DEI programs, right? There's been a lot of fight, and I know that you call diversity, equity, and delusion,
Yes.
right? And so there's been a lot of things that have been interesting about these past 100 days is that aside from the fight, quote unquote, to save DEI programs, we've also learned that these DEI programs were helping everybody but Black people,
Yeah.
right?
So why are we fighting for them?
But and the question is, so why do we continue
Why
to
are you fighting for stuff
fight?
that's not real and it's fake? And where Black people get all the blame and none of the benefit. Why are you taking all the blame if you're not getting any of the benefit?
Right.
I cannot understand why Black people are fighting for this nonsense. I could understand if we were getting something from it like other people. Black people are at the bottom of the diversity participation. And we Black people are the only people that we talk about Black and brown. Nobody else is talking about Black people. They talk about themselves. Now, if it benefits them, they'll include Black people. But they're not fighting for Black people. And Black people are scared to fight for themselves. They fight for everybody in the world but themselves. So, no, I don't think we ought to be crying over something that was fake in the first place.
When you look at what's been happening now and the panic and the unsurety, what should people be focusing on?
One is, like, I will give my daughter advice. You see that guy over there? That's what I always tell young ladies. If I go give a speech or something, look at the guy next to you. He's lying. There's something that he wants that you have, and he'll say whatever it is that he's got to say for you to cooperate with him. But he's lying. So, what at the end of the day, what is it we want? We want to participate in the economy in proportion to our talent.
Is that the problem right there?
No, we should.
Do we know that we want that?
Okay, if you say we, first of all, you can't go to Black people's house and ask them anything. There's 45 million Black people.
Right.
Like you can't go to white people home. You can't go to society's house. They're individuals with their own aspirations and their own ideas. And by the way, if you go back and look at history, the definition of white today and white 100 years ago is not even close to being the same thing. Greeks were not white. Italians weren't white. Jews weren't white. Swedes 150 years ago weren't white. Benjamin Franklin thought that those were people who shouldn't even be in the country. So, what is it that we want? What we should want is something that works and that's proven to work. So, if you ask yourself the question, where in the world are poor people healthy, educated, and safe? The answer is nowhere. And conversely, where are affluent people, regardless of their race, not healthy, educated, and safe? Last time I checked, Michael Jordan was black as any of us. Okay. He can go wherever he wants to go and do whatever he wants to do. His kids will go to whatever school that he wants to send them to. He's healthy as his behavior, and you can't get anywhere near him because he's safe. So he's safe. He's got money, and he's got opportunities that white people sitting up in the Appalachian Mountains don't have. Okay? So, how do people go from poverty to prosperity? It's a simple answer. It is economic participation in the modern parts of the economy that create wealth. Local grocery stores don't create wealth. So we can't have nostalgia. We can have nostalgia for the principles of the Black Wall Street. But during the Black Wall Street, okay, they just got out of the horse and buggy days. Probably when they started it, there were still people in horse and buggies. Do we also want to drive buggies pulled by horses? Do we want to go back to that as well? No, you don't. Where's the money created in the economy? Tech, finance, and legal, the technical professional services. Try to name a rich person today that's not connected to tech, finance, or legal. All the richest people are in one of those buckets. And Black people don't participate at all. So what we need is we got no problem that some money won't solve for us. And nobody is writing you a check. We got to be business people. Then we will hire our own people. We'll create opportunity for our own people. Our own young men will see that there's something for them other than being a hoodlum. That's it. All we got to do is just do business. Get people to just do business with us in proportion to our talent. Because now this whole DEI nonsense, I've gotten in debates with people about this, where they say, well, America's got to go back to the equality of opportunity, not the equality of outcome. Well, like, when was that? So if you ask yourself the question, who really has more opportunity? A poor kid, urban or rural, that's got Einstein's intellect, works like a pig, and they have great character? Or the drug addicted son of a billionaire, who's really got more opportunity? If you think it's that poor kid, you're a moron. Your net worth is your net worth. Listen, I used to work at IBM, and IBM had a no nepotism rule, but everybody in my family worked at IBM. Why? Because my father could say, hey, you hire my kids, I hire your kids. That is the way the world works. So what I think is we got to stop begging other people for their charity. And also being willing, because I personally think we owe it to those that came before us to do something for those that come after us. And Black men have to take a greater responsibility on fighting for their sons. And Black women also need to take some responsibility for making sure that their sons are going to have opportunities. Not that their daughters are not, but their sons are behind their daughters. So the problem that we have is a Black man has no dignity anywhere. A man without dignity is a dangerous animal. And I don't think that we fight for ourselves in any meaningful way. And that's a problem that we have, in my view.
Talk to us about Teslav's role in motivating this idea of getting folks involved in free enterprise and understanding that everyone can participate.
So the idea is, well, again, we need what I call the fourth great American movement. The first was the founding of the Republic, right? The first country on earth that it was founded that says the government reports to the people don't report to the government. And that was a novel idea in the world. The second was, how do we removing the stain of slavery from the US? Because if the Constitution really meant, if you're a free country, how are you going to have people that are owned? That was always a problem. So there were white people, Quakers and others, that thought that that was an evil system. So if it wasn't for white people of goodwill, Black people would have been like Native Americans. We all would have been dead, or we still be slaves. So at the end of the day, there's good and evil in the world. Slavery was a system of evil, in my view. And Americans, what people don't understand about America, about Americans, America is the religion of Americans. More than Christianity. They believe that God made America, that if you do your best, the American dream is available to everybody that puts in the work. And if you don't, it's because you're lazy or you're mentally incapacitated. It's just something's wrong with you. So when Martin Luther King actually wanted Americans to see, like in the civil rights movement in Alabama, dogs biting women and, old ladies and stuff like that, because it messes with their mind. This is not America. No, you only go to jail if you do something wrong in America, unless it happens to me or my family. So that was a second. Then there was the civil rights movement, right after the abolition of slavery. Frankly, there was a new kind of slavery, which is Jim Crow. And by the way, that wasn't just in the South. There were practices in the North and laws in the South. So you either have to believe, and I absolutely, since I'm a libertarian, I absolutely believe in freedom. The freedom to do what you want, say what you want, buy what you want, eat what you want, as long as you're willing to pay the consequences for it. Right? I shouldn't be able to take heroin and then make you responsible for my Medicare. Anyway, that's my own view. So, young people are confusing, in my view, socialism with social good. In my view, they're not the same. Socialism means government decides everything for you. And there's different types of socialism. There's the class socialism, which you think of as, right, where supposedly the proletariat against the bourgeoisie. Then you have, and that's where the government essentially owns all the means of production. But there's another class of socialism called fascism, which is a different class of socialism, which is a nationalistic form of socialism. You can own your own company, but you can only do what the government tells you that you can do. That's also socialism, but it's more of a nationalistic socialism. But at the end of the day, a government bureaucrat still gets to run your life. When they think about the civil rights movement, they don't think that it was actually one government prohibiting another government from having a different set of rules. All the stuff in the Jim Crow South, those were government laws. That was still government. And the only thing, the bus boycotts worked relatively quickly. Why? Because that was costing somebody some money. I may not want you to marry my daughter or live near me, but I will take your money to get on my bus. And if you're not, then my daughter doesn't get to eat. That's why the bus boycotts worked. That's why we shouldn't be caring about, I don't care whether you like black people or not. What difference does that make? Now, if we get to participate in the economy in proportion to our talent, I don't care if you go home and say nigger 50 times a day. It's irrelevant. What do I care about that? Now, if you keep me from doing something that I want to do, then that's a problem. And I think we should stop worrying about whether people like us or don't like us, because lots of people like you and won't do anything for you except give you some crumbs, just enough to keep you poor and miserable. If that's the case, like where in this country do black people participate in the economy in proportion to their talent? Not one place. Not where the Republicans are in control, not where the Democrats are in control. So where is all this love? That's why I say love is a verb. You can. So I tell my daughter, they can say all kinds of wonderful things to you, but there's something that they're after. So don't believe all this sweet talk that people are giving you. We got kids in Chicago, they still drinking water with lead. They still got to drink water with lead. Now, what do you think happens to people who drink water with lead? They become mentally ill. And then what do mentally ill people do who are between 8 and 27 years old? They commit crimes. And who controls the economy in poor neighborhoods? Organized criminals. Black people, we're never going to solve this problem if we keep begging other people to save us. We just need to do business in proportion to our talent, and that'll solve every problem in the world that we have. I haven't figured out, and I'll be 65 this year. So I lived through the 60s. There's not a black neighborhood in the country that I know of, except one that I worked on here in Chicago, that's better off today than it was in the year 1967.
But you also feel that it is the responsibility of the people who benefited from all of these other movements to do something right now to create this next great American movement.
Yes, it's everybody. It's people of goodwill. It's people of goodwill, whether you're black or white or you're anything, it doesn't really matter. And by the way, if you believe, which I happen to believe, is that we're all just human beings broken up into tribes. Now, when the Eastern Europeans immigrated to the United States, the Irish and the Italians hated each other. They didn't consider themselves white. One group was Italian, the other was Irish, and they couldn't stand one another. The Irish hated the English. So you have all kinds of tribes that act like this. The Catholics hated the Protestants in Europe. They couldn't get along. Black people are no different. We know better and we're no worse. But we do need to figure out what works. And like if you want to be a football player, if you're black, if you're Mexican, if you're Korean, if you're Samoan, if you want to be bigger, you go to the weight room and it works. You're a human being. And that's it. If you want to play basketball, why is it that basketball now is black people and people from Eastern Europe? That's where the poor people are in Europe. They're in Eastern Europe. And the market tells poor people, place your bets on sports and entertainment. But there's very few spots for that. That's why we don't own anything. And if you don't own something, you can't live in dignity. You become frustrated. You can't protect your own family and your community. So, by the way, we are all going to sink or swim together. Right. White people, black people, Hispanic people, we're going to sink or swim together. That's what I believe.
Politically, what do you forecast for where we are in the next 4 years, outside of political affiliation, but based on what's going on, based on the goals of this administration, what is it that people should be?
Listen, I would say the goals of this administration versus when have black people been better? And tell me how. So the only thing is, in this administration, they don't hide anything. They don't go around telling black people that they love them and not doing anything for them. What's the difference? If I kiss you and shoot you in the head, you're still dead. If I tell you I love you and you're wonderful and you're still starving, what difference does it make if I call you nigger and say it, or if I call you honey and say it? You're still going to starve. So where were we before Trump? Like, tell me where black people were being successful. I'm missing it. Where were we successful? So who loved us so much that they were giving us all these opportunities instead of platitudes? Where is it? Where can black people go to get some dignity? I'm not talking about some, oh, we love you colored people speeches. Black people get lots of lectures and no money. And you can't eat sympathy. So what do I care whether somebody's mean or not mean? What difference does it make? How are we going to get some money? And you get money through participation in the economy. That's it. And we got to stop worrying about whether people like us or don't like us or not. If you can feed your family, if you can live in dignity, and the next big thing that's coming, do you know how much of black employment comes from the government? The government is broke. The federal government is $36 trillion in debt. Okay, that's more than 100% of GDP. And we run an annual budget deficit of $2 trillion. Okay, that money trickles down to state and local government. If we don't have jobs there, where are we going to get the money to send our kids to school, to feed them, to buy cars, to have a house, to live in dignity? If that goes away, and it's going to go away because the government is broke, then what? Unfortunately for us, we don't pay attention to the tremors. We wait for the earthquake. And right now, there are tremors. If you pay attention, then we would do something. And that is, where's the money? Government, is the biggest customer in the country. How much do they spend directly with Black people? They talk about the one percenters. We're the one percenters.
Yeah.
Just we get 1%. We don't own 1%. We get 1%. Black people collectively have no net worth. Zero. So there's only one way out of this. By the way, India and China took 750 million people out of poverty in 20 years. Black people went deeper into poverty. Well, what did they do? Now, I can tell you, poverty in India and China, those people, and I've been to both places, they weren't running around with cell phones, much less two of them, in cars. At the best, they had a bicycle or cows pulling a cart. It was like going back in time. Those people are living on $1 a day. So what is it that they did to get so many people out of poverty so fast? Simple. The government started doing business with their small entrepreneurs, which prepared them for the international market. And then U.S. business just did business with capable Asian entrepreneurs. That's it. They weren't trying to save any little Indian and Chinese kids. There weren't any billionaires going to their schools, taking pictures. They just did business. And then those entrepreneurs sent the signal to everybody else, this is where the opportunity and money is. And now they totally dominate technology and math and science and stuff where all the money is. So if you're a weightlifter, you would go look at a successful weightlifter and see what they did to get so big. It's going to be, they go to the gym and they take steroids. Simple. But you're not going to go pay a not-for-profit to do a study for a year to figure out what to do about how you can get more muscle, which is what we do. We got programs for everything. We still broke. So anyway, I don't know if I gave you the answer you wanted, but that's
no. You definitely give us a lot to think about. Sometimes it makes us feel a little bit more depressed about where we are. It's a simple formula that you put forth. And the other unpopular idea is that there are a lot of people who make money on keeping us on this treadmill, keeping us on this hamster wheel of fighting for DEI or fighting for these programs. I mean, there's a whole industry that makes money off of that as well.
Yeah, and it's not us. So the idea is, so after the whole George Floyd incident happened, I wrote this series of articles called Love is a Verb. The theme of that is that nobody can protect or feed their family based on your sympathy. So if you want to help somebody, go buy something from them. And that was kind of the idea. So the idea is if we can get people to just do business with people that are ready to do business, and then in exchange for that opportunity, they got 3 responsibilities. A Black entrepreneur: identify a clear value proposition, because it's not the responsibility of the customer to solve the problem of the vendor. That's the other way around. That's not sustainable. That's fake. Number 2 is, in exchange for that opportunity, you have to reach back and pull somebody from your community along. So now we're creating social capital. We're pulling people forward. And that's how you get wealth in your community. That's how you pull people in your community forward. That's how younger people get opportunities. And that is what we need to focus on. Black mayors sit over 40% of GDP. And there's not a place in the country where Black people participate remotely in proportion to our talent. So politics hasn't helped us that much.
And the examples that you've given, even on your site, is that when business people get together, right, they can solve. It's been proven how they've been able to solve many of the problems.
By the way, between every great movement in the United States, there's been business people. All progress that Black people have achieved, there's been some Black business people in the background. Starting in the late 1700s, there was a man named James Forten from Philadelphia, who was one of the richest people in Philadelphia in the late 1770s, who was one of the primary funders of the abolitionist movement. We have no idea, most people, who he was. Martin Luther King wouldn't have been able to do almost anything without Black business people. fact, there was a guy named George Johnson, if you remember Johnson Products. He started a bank called Independence Bank, and he gave Martin Luther King his first loan. Traveling across the country wasn't free. His kids had to eat. It was black business people that have been behind all progress for our people.
And that's not going to change. History has shown that that's what is going to be required for today as well.
That's right. So what I would say is, okay, so the thing is, what is that we can do? Black people spend a lot of money and ask for nothing, do a lot of voting and ask for nothing. And I would say especially black women who vote as much or more than anybody. Where's the money? If black women will start to ask these elected officials, where's the money? Not for me, not for my neighborhood, but where's the money for black business people? We would change everything really quickly. Because Malcolm X said this in 1965. Black people actually hold the power because Democrats can't get elected without black people. Republicans don't now pay it. Black people used to be Republicans. Right. Don't pay attention to them because they think there's black people who never vote for them. So if you're going to vote, just ask, where's the money? Why can't black people participate in proportion to our talent? And that's it. We're not asking for any special favors, just no special punishment. Yeah. And if we do that, there's no lack of talent in our community. There's a lack of economic opportunity.
How can we support what you're doing at Test.love?
What I would say is, I believe that if you got a group of 200 black women together and they were to ask, send a letter to mayors or governors. I want to know how much business you're doing with black people directly, not through subcontracting. By the way, it's 5 months worth of research. So you're in New York City. Okay. The budget of New York City is $120 billion. Okay. How much money goes directly to black people in the modern parts of the economy that create wealth? How much money is it? How much it is in DC, which has got a $10 billion budget? I can tell you it adds up to nothing. And if we stop becoming a cheap date, we'll solve every problem. And I think that we ought to go look at our children before they go to bed and say, if we don't get this right, if we don't do something different, we are condemning our kids to misery. Yeah. And if you want to know how bad it could be for black people, go watch any video on how black people live in the Caribbean. Most people don't know that when Brazil has a black crime problem, they just mow down with machine gun black kids. How black people get treated in this world is criminal. And we sit by and we watch it because we are relatively comfortable. Poverty in the United States ain't real poverty. You can't have money to drive a fancy car or to have an iPhone or something like that if you're poor in Haiti. We ought to look at how black people live. And to me, it's criminal. Why black kids in Chicago have to be drinking water with lead. And, it's because it's been that way. We accept it. And I believe that God is going to punish us for that. So I would say when you go look at your kids and imagine that you're not here, what do you leave? What kind of opportunity and dignity are you leaving for them? And I think we're not. You go look at your own child and say, what kind of world do I want my child to live in? That's what our parents and great grandparents did. They caught hell, like real hell, so that their kids and grandkids would have a better life. We have not done that. Maynard Jackson did that in Atlanta. There are other black mayors during that generation. Harold Washington, Coleman. Where is that now? No, we're happy now. We can go to whatever club we want and do whatever we want. But we don't see that the infrastructure of the black community it's melting. And you're condemning your kids to poverty and misery. Maybe you're lucky enough as an individual that you've accumulated enough wealth that they have. But if your kids are going to depend on a job and you're not just passing them down a bunch of money, your kids are at risk. And I think it's not acceptable that we don't do something about it.
Robert Blackwell Jr., thank you so much for imparting simple but important and missed insight. Do want to ask you, how are your businesses doing? How's the table tennis, ping pong?
Yeah, listen, I don't know.
doing?
Listen, God must love crazy math people, because
well, yeah, the world is formulated and operates on math. So I always feel that people who think with a math mind are way beyond the rest of us, because the universe, it's the language of the universe. And so the fact that you can see it and get it and operate in it, like, listen, you have an advantage.
Well, listen, I just feel blessed by God that, that I'm kind of doing okay. My daughter gets to eat, but I'm more concerned about what is going to happen to people in our community in a few years. And this could fall apart for us quickly. So I hope that, people think about what is our responsibility. And by the way, if you're a Christian, God put you here for a reason. That's what I believe. And it's not just for your own entertainment.
Thank you so much, sir. I know we kept you a little over the time that you allotted for us, but we appreciate the time that you spent.
Absolutely. It's good to see you.
Same here. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back again next week with another great guest. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcast. On social media on IG at business_first_podcast. Follow the Mean Old Line Media Podcast Network on IG at Mean Old Line Media. Get the Mean Old Line Media app in the App Store or Google Play. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.